Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Saturday Morning Cartooning, where we learn about the history of famous cartoon characters and learn to draw them together. Today we're learning about a trio of rodents that made it big in the music business, Alvin and the Chipmunks. Unlike other cartoon characters talked about on this show, Alvin and the Chipmunks did not start out as a cartoon. The characters were created in 1958 by singer and songwriter Ross Bagdasarian Sr. They were background vocals for a novelty record called Witch Doctor. The squeaky voices of what would become the Chipmunks made for a huge musical hit. Later on, Bagdasarian became known for his use of chipmunk voices, so he created characters around them. Alvin is the mischievous troublemaker, Simon is the tall, smart one, and Theodore is the short, cute one. Fun fact, Ross Bagdasarian was the voice for all three chipmunks, so he was singing in harmony with himself. Their next big hit was the Chipmunk song, a now very famous Christmas song. Before they were famous cartoon characters, Alvin and the Chipmunks was a 1960s comic book that usually featured Alvin as the star. Alvin clearly became the most beloved of the Chipmunk trio. Alvin and the Chipmunks eventually was made into cartoon shows like The Alvin Show in the 1960s. In 1981, A Chipmunk's Christmas came out as a primetime TV special, which eventually became the 1983 show Alvin and the Chipmunks. This is the show that I grew up on. This show also introduced the Chipettes, a girl group version of the Chipmunks named Brittany, Jeanette, and Eleanor. Today we'll be trying to draw the 1960s version of the Chipmunks. As we draw, remember to look at your subject and break it down into its basic shapes. Then you can go back and build the character on top of that. Like always, we'll be inking, erasing the original pencil lines, and then adding color.
Okay, let's start our drawing of Alvin and the Chipmunks. And this is the first time we're going to be doing three characters at once. Of course, all three chipmunks, Alvin, Simon, and Theodore. So it's going to be a little ambitious. But if we take a look at the reference photo, we're doing the 60s version of Alvin and the Chipmunks, and they're very minimal. Look at the lines. There's not a lot of detail, very smooth lines. This is very similar to sort of like that style of George Jetson or Yogi Bear, those smooth lines. It's very 60s. So we're going to very simply just make these basic shapes and then just draw right on top of them. So let's get started with that. Have your paper ready, your pencil, your inking marker, your eraser, and we're going to need some colors, not too many. We're going to need, of course, red for Alvin, a little bit of yellow for Alvin as well, green for Theodore, blue for Simon, and we got sort of like this sand color or this sable color for their fur. So let's get started with basic shapes. We need to figure out where each one of them is going to stand. So back in the 60s, Alvin was sort of the shortest one. So we're just going to put like this little mushroom shape right there for Alvin. Theodore was the next tallest one. And he's slightly bigger. And then Simon was the tallest one. We're going to put him over here. Get a load of these shapes. These are very, very 60s. Think back to especially the Jetsons. Remember we talked about the Googie architecture of the time? It was very smooth and it was very representative of the space age, which was what the 60s was all about. All right, so we have the three heads on there. Let's get their bodies in. And they, again, very simply, they all wear these oversized shirts. Turtlenecks, long sleeve, goes all the way down to their feet. This is going to make it very easy for us to draw because we're not drawing individual body parts. So all we need is just a little neck, turtleneck, and then a line going down. And we're going to cap it, but we're going to cap it with sort of like a curved line, just so that we can leave room for feet here and here. Now, this foot might get cut off by Alvin's body. Let's put Alvin's body in. Actually, before we do that, let's put on his arms. Easy for us, his arms are going behind him. So all we need to do is just draw his shoulder and his elbows. Okay. With Alvin, same thing. He's got a turtleneck, but we're leaving room for his arm that's going to go out this way. So yes, the bottom of Alvin's shirt cuts off, depending on where you drew Simon, cuts off his foot. And he's got one foot here and one foot going out this way. Sketch in this arm, sketch in this arm. We see where this arm connects to the body, not so on this side. So we're just, when it comes time to ink, we're going to ink all the way down. We don't see where the arm connects to the body. It's turned away from the viewer. And he has one thumb going up, palm, and then two fingers. And then this one, I'll just clean up that line a little bit. Thumb and three fingers. 1, 2, and 3. It's okay, they do not need to be perfect. We're not going for realism. This is 60s animation. Alright, before we get into their faces, let's just get all their bodies in. So now let's do Theodore. Here's his turtleneck. Then he's got an arm that's actually, when we start inking it, is going to be inked all on its own. So he's got, and his fingers look like this: 1, 2, 3. And they go right back into the elbow and around. That's the bottom of his shirt, and then his 2 feet. Depending on where Alvin starts, it might get cut off a little bit. And then his other arm is behind him, so we don't have to worry about that one. Okay, now let's work on their faces. Let's start with Alvin, because Alvin is the only one who's actually going to be wearing a hat. So we need to start with his ear right over here, because his ear is going to tell us where to begin the hat. It's going to go up like this. So the hat, this is his hat tucked behind his ear, and it goes right up into the brim. Then the brim comes around this way. And then where his head is, we're just going to extend it a little bit out. And there's his hat. At the same time, we're just going to put a little bit of a line thickening the brim. We can clean that up later when we ink. Alright, he's got 3 little tufts of hair coming out from underneath the brim of his hat. So 1, 2, and 3. And then, if you want to, you don't really have to, but if you want to, let's put in those face lines. That vertical face line is really going to help us determine where his eyes would go. He's a 3/4 side view character. That means we see, as a viewer, we see 3/4 of his face. We only see one ear. The other one is behind this part of the head over here. But this vertical line right here, this is the vertical face line. It's curved because he's actually turning in this direction. So one eye is going to be right about here. Use that line as your guide. And then the other one's going to be slightly smaller on the other side of the line. And very simply, he only has 2 little pupils like that. Alright. he's got a little muzzle that might cut off the bottom of the eyes. And there's a little, almost diamond-shaped nose right there. The muzzle comes out from the other side of the nose, and then up into his smile. And now we're going to give him his lower lip over here. 2 little teeth. We could actually just draw one and put a line down the middle. A little suggestion of a tongue in there, and then the inside of the mouth. Alright, I'm also just going to put a little bit more of a divot on the side of the head over here, just to make it look like he has sort of like a brow area and then his big cheeks. Alright, getting that swooping, curved lines. And then the other side of his head. Then we just want to draw this line right here. That's just going to indicate the top of his turtleneck. And then the other side is going to, you go up from where the face meets that inside turtleneck line to right about here and create the illusion that it's going around his head. Alright, all this can remain the same. I am going to just fix the line of this arm so that it is even with this arm. And very famously, Alvin has a big letter A on his shirt. So we do sort of like, almost like a pyramid shape without the point. 2 feet for the A. And then a little triangle on the inside. So move that down just a bit. There we go. Good. Now Alvin's shoes are slightly different than the other 2 chipmunk shoes. He has sort of like white tops to his shoes, I guess indicating that he's wearing some sort of sneaker. So we're just going to take the shoes and just echo that same shape, a little bit of a smaller shape so it looks like the top of the shoe, and then just a little line right there. Same here. Echo that line of the shoe, and then a line right there. Alright, so we got Alvin done. Let's do Theodore. Let's put in that face line. All we really need is the vertical one. And he's got slightly more rounded tufts. The side of his head, and an ear. And then that curved, same thing like we did on Alvin, we're going to give him a little bit more of a divot right here, and then go out into the cheek. Right, but let's put in his eyes. He's got little oval eyes right next to each other. Here's his little muzzle. Almost like a rounded triangle shaped nose, just like Alvin's. We can shade that in like we did over here, just so we know to ink that in later. He's got a little smile line, and then use that vertical line as your guide. That's where we'll put his little tooth. And he's looking off to this side, and we can ink those in later on. Okay, same thing. We're going to do the interior line of the turtleneck, and then start up here so it looks like it's going around his neck, and then over his shoulder. And he has little eyebrows right here. Most of it is cut off by the little tuft of hair over here. Alright, let's just slightly darken in this arm, although we're not really going to have to do much to this one because it's going to remain the same. And then this side of his shirt, notice how I'm sort of drawing around the feet, and then in between the feet I'm going down, just suggesting that the fabric is dipping down in between the two feet. We can even give him a little bit of a fold in the fabric right at this foot. Okay, let's move on to Simon. Simon's interesting because his eyes are actually just big glasses. So we're going to draw two ovals here and here. A line going back. He's got these thick frames, so he's got this big arm on his glasses coming back, tucked behind one ear. Okay, and his muzzle is going to cut off the bottom, just the very bottom of the glasses, and then come around this way. Again, that rounded triangle shape for the nose. The muzzle going back. Smile. Going down. Suggestion of a tongue. Inside of the mouth. The other cheek is coming out this way. His, well actually let's thicken the lines of the glasses so that we know that they're glasses. So this is all going to be shaded in or inked in later. Alright, and then he's going to have two pupils, one here and one here. His hair is different from the other two in that it is parted down the middle. So he's going to have two little fingers, looks like fingers, on that side, and then two little fingers on that side. And that's just his brow. Actually, I'm going to make that just a little bit more rounded. There we go. Got a thick arm on his glasses going back. Okay. He has a little bit more of a neck than the other two. So when we do the cheek section, have it come down just a little bit. Just the slightest little indication of a neck right there. And then the turtleneck going around. This is the arm. It's easy on this one because his arms are going behind him. He's standing with his hands behind him. A little suggestion of a fabric fold right there. You can do the same over here. The feet stay the same. We're going to ink those in later. And there's our pencil for Alvin and the Chipmunks. Let's ink them now. I was going to use a fine point, but looking at my drawing, I think an ultra fine point, which is slightly thinner, might do the job better. So let's start with Alvin to his ear. That's that line going up to his hat. His three little tufts of hair, the thickened brim, and then the actual hat portion of his hat. Then let's do that rounded triangle of a nose, the top portion of his muzzle, the bottom portion of his muzzle, smile line, bottom lip, going all the way around, indication of a tongue, shade in the inside portion of the mouth, and his little teeth right there. That little line in between. Although I didn't pencil it in, I think because I did it to the other two, I'd like to do this for Alvin too. Let's give him a little indication of a fabric fold going around his shoe. You don't have to do that, but I just think it just gives it a little bit more dimension. Remember, Theodore is 3/4 side view, so one of his eyes are going to be slightly smaller than the other. The only one that really doesn't apply to is Simon, because he's wearing glasses, I guess. They look pretty much the same size. Remember, Simon has that little bit of neck. Go ahead and ink in the feet, and then we will erase our original pencil lines. Alright, let's give them some color. Let's do their fur first. And remember, we have this sort of like sable color or sand color. Their colors are fairly simple. Theodore is usually in green. Simon is usually in blue. Alvin, of course, is usually in red. Both his hat and his shirt are red. While we have the red out, there's a little bit of red tongue there and a red tongue here. Theodore's mouth is closed. And the last little bit is the big yellow A on Alvin's shirt. And there we have the 60s version of Alvin and the Chipmunks.